I believe we had started talking about that video yesterday. We see a person return to that black BMW. They stop around the front of the car and then get in.
Yeah.
And we don't know what they were doing at the front of the vehicle, right?
We don't know. They're looking at something.
All right. Now, and I think I may have asked you this already, but because we kind of stopped abruptly, just to make sure we're on the same page, there were no reports that evening that you're aware of car break-ins.
Not to my knowledge, but with car break-ins, a lot of times, we see this a lot, when people do call 911, there could be hours-long wait times because they're considered a low-priority call if it's not actively in progress. Some people, if there's not major damage or anything expensive not missing from their car, they'll choose not to report it just because they don't want to go through the wait. Or maybe they don't even notice that anything important is missing until later.
All right, but not to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge of that car being reported, no.
All right, and that's something that you would have followed up on, right?
If I'd gotten information on it, yeah.
All right. Now, I also want to show you another video from State's Exhibit 9. And then I will ask you some questions about this video. Going to share my screen again. All right, can you see on your screen the date and timestamp on this video?
It looks like February 25th, 2022 at 22:43 or 10:43.
Okay, and I'm just going to start it at 0. I'll let you watch it and then we can talk about it. All right, and I'm going to stop it at 17 seconds into the video. Did you see the person run by the camera?
Jog, walk, runs. He goes by the camera, yes.
Okay. And I know that you said earlier that if someone wasn't picked up on any of the other cameras that we have used for it, they would have had to come from the Beach Circle area, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again for me.
Earlier when we were talking yesterday, I think it was your position that if someone didn't show up on the VIC cameras that we talked about, or the cameras on the other side of the apartment that we talked about, then the only route they could have come from was past Beach Circle.
Yes.
All right. And the person you just saw running, and I can show it to you again, are you aware of him showing up on any other camera angle?
Right now, just randomly, I can't recall. I viewed a lot of people going through the area.
All right. And that is at 10:43 p.m. And we established yesterday there was some discrepancy in the camera timing.
Correct.
And so shots could have occurred somewhere between 10:27 and 10:31. If there's a 4-minute.
3.5 to 4 minute, yes.
All right. And so that person jogging, running from the scene would be a person of interest as well, right?
I'm going to object to the form of that question, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll rephrase. Would somebody running from the direction where a shooting occurred within 10 minutes of that shooting be considered a person of interest?
I would say it's the totality of the circumstances. Obviously, we looked at anybody whose behaviors were considered unusual, but as you've seen in previous videos, a number of people go jogging through the area, so it's not uncommon to see someone jogging. Anybody that passed through the footprint, we looked at and followed to see what they did in that area around that time, if they've left the area where they were coming from, etc.
All right. And stop my share. All right. Now, I think you also said yesterday that Mr. Williams was easy to follow on the cameras because of his clothing.
It wasn't just Mr. Williams. It was all three of them had distinct clothing.
Okay. And Mr. Williams himself had on bright green pants, right?
Yes, a jumpsuit.
And one of the other gentlemen had on bright red shorts.
Yes.
That doesn't seem like clothing you'd wear if you're out to commit a crime spree, does it?
I have seen and interviewed and encountered people who commit crimes in various clothings, from dresses to skirts, very tight skirts, clothed, not clothed, flip-flops, sandals, sneakers, combat boots, coveralls, underwear. I mean, I've seen a variety of people commit crimes in a variety of clothing. It really is not unusual to see someone wear bright colors. In fact, I've had previous cases where people involved that were committing criminal acts wore bright Lakers gold and purple while in committing an act.
All right, but it's not very stealthy, is what I'm saying.
A person doesn't have to dress in all black to conceal themselves if they're committing a crime. In my 15 years of experience, I've seen people commit crimes in various clothing.
All right, that's fair. Now, we also saw the video of the people who were on the big camera seen turning their heads at around 10:27-ish. Mm-hmm. And there's no sound on the big cameras, correct?
Correct.
And so we're not positive about what they were reacting to.
No, but given the fact that a gunshot occurs around a similar time frame on the other camera where we do get an audible gunshot, the most likely scenario is that they are reacting to a gunshot being heard.
All right, but those people didn't call the police and say, I heard gunshots.
No, they did not.
All right. And we've seen the video. They don't take off running.
No, they do not. But again, in Atlanta, gunshots are not uncommon. A lot of people choose not to get involved for fear of their own safety.
All right. Now, moving on, you obtained, during your investigation, cell phones from several people, correct?
Correct.
All right. And who did you obtain them from?
You're talking about the records or the physical cell phones?
Well, physical first, and then I'll ask about records.
So physical cell phones, the victims, and then upon arrest of Mr. Ross, and then of Mr. Malik Williams.
All right. Did you obtain a cell phone from Brandon Williams when he was arrested?
There was no cell phone recovered for Brandon Williams.
Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to the video of Brandon Williams' arrest, but you said you reviewed all the videos in this case?
I've reviewed the videos.
All right. And when Brandon Williams is arrested, he is talking on a cell phone. Is that accurate?
I don't recall.
All right. Well, let me go back to State's Exhibit 103. Sorry, everything takes a little while on my laptop to open. Some sharing was previously been marked as States 103. Get this sound.
Do you have to unmute?
I'm going to see if I can play the sound for you. I'm going to start this video at 6 minutes and 59 seconds. Stamp is not gathering. Well, I'll start at 6:50. for screen sharing. Let me see if that does it. No, there's no sound. Oh, I need to unmute. Thank you. Teamwork. All right. So now I'm starting at 6 minutes and 56 seconds.
Man, get my phone, man. Get my phone, man.
Okay, you're going to be leaving that for
Man, what you talking about?
I'm going to pause it at 7:03. That's Mr. Williams saying, get my phone, correct?
I don't know which individual that is.
And starting back at 7:03.
What's your catch? No, you're just
Why you taking the game?
Watch out, see. Yep.
Man, what y'all in the room for?
Yeah, just go ahead.
Hey, let me get that phone. Let me get that phone. Put that phone in my pocket. Man, it's great.
Pause again at 7:33. Now you can see Mr. Williams on camera, correct?
Well, because he's got a hood on, I can't definitively say, based on this footage, whether or not that is him.
So you don't recognize the person in the video as Brandon Williams?
Well, I wasn't on scene. I'm looking at a body camera footage. Your client is partially concealed with the hoodie on it, or the mask on his head and lower chin area. I mean, I can't definitively say who they have detained because there were several people in there and they pulled a lot of people out. So I can't definitively say that at this point in this video that this is Brandon Williams without watching the whole rest of the video and having them stand still.
All right. Well, I am going to start it back at 7:33.
Get that phone, though. Hey, stay on the phone, E. Stay on the phone, E.
And I'm pausing again at 7:42. Although you can identify this person, he is telling someone to stay on the phone. Stay on the phone, E. Right.
Yes, he's saying stay on the phone, E.
All right. Implying that there is a telephone conversation in progress, even though you can't identify this person.
Sure.
Okay. Now, because this was previously marked as State's Exhibit 103, provided by Sergeant O'Hare, I believe. I don't want to get his rank wrong. And he testified that he was arresting Brandon Williams. Would that help you in identifying him in this video?
So when the package goes to fugitive, and in this particular situation, we had 2 arrest warrants at that time. Fugitive does not advise me when they are going to hit a warrant, where they're going to hit a warrant, how they're going to hit a warrant. It's called OPSEC, or operational security. The people who don't need to know the pertinent information don't get the pertinent information relating to their operations, because there have been, unfortunately, leaks within our own department, as I'm sure there is with other departments. So they try to keep their information to themselves. A lot of times in their investigations, it may take several days of tracking an individual before they're able to effect an arrest. And obviously I can't work 24 hours a day and work on cases and assist other investigators on their cases and be present for the fugitive investigations.
All right. But either way, it's your testimony that you did not recover a phone from Brandon Williams.
I personally did not recover a phone from Brandon Williams, no.
All right. And you never heard of a phone being recovered from Brandon Williams?
I rely on the information that's conveyed to me by the fugitive unit when they conduct their arrests. If I'm not presented with a phone, I'm unaware of a phone.
All right. And the phones that you did recover, you looked at for evidence, right? To see if there was any evidence in those phones.
Correct.
And you didn't find any evidence in any of the phones that you had that there were conversations prior to February 25th of 2022 about meeting up and committing any crimes?
Offhand, I couldn't tell you. I'm not sure.
All right. But that would have been something that was important, right?
If during the investigation, when we looked at it, if there had been a plot to plan to go out and commit crimes and describe in detail crimes it would have gotten my attention. Now, as we saw with the previous text threads, there's a lot of street slang that out of context may not seem like it's a plot or anything, but it could have been something in there.
All right, but it's something that you would have noted if you had come across that.
If I had detected it, then yes, I would have documented it.
Fair. Now, we talked earlier about, or I think you talked on direct about the day, I believe, after the shooting, you got a search warrant for Mr. Harmon's home.
Correct.
And that was just, as you said, to cover all your bases, right?
To rule out that he had any suicidal ideations.
All right. Did you ever get a search warrant for Brandon's home?
No, I did not.
All right. And as a homicide detective, would you think that there might be something of evidentiary value at the home of someone you're accusing of murder?
Not necessarily, especially since we had the context that the two of them were on the run and they were going to different locations. It was likely that anything that were at multiple locations may not have been there. We knew that they were already, per information we were receiving, that they were on the run and changing places, changing vehicles they were with, things of that nature.
So you decided not even to look?
No.
All right. You didn't go to Brandon's house to look for a gun or any bloody clothing?
Well, Brandon didn't have any one centralized location that he was going to. No. So we did not go and look at the multiple locations that he may have been going to, like the numerous hotel rooms and things like that. No.
All right. You weren't aware that he was living with his mother?
I'm sorry?
You weren't aware that he was living with his mother?
No, to my knowledge, he was bouncing. He was going from location to location.
But either way, you never searched any of the locations where you thought he might be?
No, we did not.
All right. Now I want to go back to, for a minute, Malik Williams. You obtained an arrest warrant for Malik Williams. Is that correct?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Certainly.
I'm going to approach with what I'm going to mark Defense Exhibit 2. Do you recognize what I'm handing you?
Yes.
And what do you recognize it as?
Affidavit for arrest secured through Fulton County Magistrate Court for Malik Williams.
All right. And does that appear to be an accurate copy of that document?
Yes.
All right. I move to admit Defense Exhibit 2 and publish.
No objection.
So admitted, you may publish.
Gotta put my glasses on. Sorry. It should be popping up on the screen. And can you see it in front of you?
Part of it.
All right. Bring scroll up. Let me start at the, so here's the top. Can you see that now? There's
Yes.
some box.
Some of it, yes.
I think that box is going to go away in a second. There it is. All right. And so you can see the document marked affidavit for arrest.
Yes.
And first line says personally came and parent.
I'm sorry, say that.
The first sentence is personally came and parent.
Yes.
And end parent is you, correct?
Yes.
All right. And if we look down here, is that your signature showing on the bottom left?
Yes.
And what time and date was that signed by you?
September 14th, 2022.
All right. Now, what time? Let me rephrase that. That's the same day that Shaquan Crawford identified Malik Williams in the lineup, correct?
I don't recall the date that he did the lineup.
Well, let me show you that, which has already been admitted. Reshare. And can you see on the screen well, as soon as that box goes away, the photo lineup admonition?
Yes, I see the form for the most part, yes.
All right, and I'm just going to scroll down. And can you see the part under photographic lineup identification?
Yes.
And it is, can you read the date and time there?
Looks like 9/14/22.
All right, so that was the same day you obtained the warrant.
Yes.
All right, and it's a little less than 2 hours after the identification.
Yes.
So when you got that identification, you took that and went and got the warrant pretty quickly, correct?
Well, there was information in the case in the, September, let's say almost 7 months from the time of the incident to the time that that lineup occurs. So there's information that has been gathered that we had to further investigate in order to secure enough probable cause for an arrest.
All right, but either way, less than 2 hours between the identification and the warrant.
Sure, yeah.
All right. Now, at some point, Brandon Williams was arrested and you had the opportunity to attempt an interview with him.
Correct.
All right. Before you signed an arrest warrant for Brandon Williams, did you ever try to make contact with him any other way?
No, because we knew he was actively on the run. Because of the communications we were receiving and the information we were receiving, he was actively running, knowing that he was involved in a crime. We don't want to alert him to any additional information because we know that it's going to make it difficult for apprehension. So at that point in our investigation, we had developed enough probable cause for Mr. Williams and Mr. Ross that we were able to secure warrants. And that's the way we bring them in, especially since we believe them to be involved in a serious violent crime.
All right, and so once once Brandon Williams is arrested, so we can keep it clear, did you make an attempt to interrogate him?
I did read him his Miranda rights. I spoke to him. He invoked his right to remain silent.
Okay, so he never confessed any crimes to you?
No, he did not confess to me, no.
All right. The only person he supposedly confessed to is Shaquan Crawford?
To my knowledge, that's the only one that has come forward and said that he personally confessed to committing the act to him.
All right. Now, we see in all these videos there's a third person. We've been referring to him as Taboo.
Mm-hmm.
And after you discovered that Malik Williams wasn't even in the city of Atlanta at the time of this crime, what did you do to try to identify Taboo?
So what's important, and I'm glad you brought that up, what's important here to note is when we took Mr. Williams into custody and we came and spoke to him, we read him his same Miranda rights as we did to Mr. Williams, Mr. Ross, and asked him if he wished to speak to police about the situation. And he more than willingly wanted to speak to us to provide his alibi for where he was.
And I don't object as non-responsive. I didn't ask you anything about Malik Williams.
Well, no, I'm getting to the answer of your question because you wanted to know how we got done with Malik Williams and how we focused on how we identified the other Taboo, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so when we brought him in for questioning to speak to him upon the arrest, because we did obtain the arrest warrant for him based on the investigation we had at that time, he also brought in his cell phone that was recovered with him and provided to me, and was telling us, please look at my cell phone. I was not there. And it's the same technology and review that puts Mr. Ross and Mr. Williams on scene of the crime. That's the same technology that was actually used to exonerate Malik Williams from being at that location. So we were able to confirm his account that he was not there at the time, and he was in fact in Macon. And at that point, we reached to the DA's office and let him know the updates in the situation, and they went ahead and proceeded as they did.
Well, I don't think that answered my question at all. What did you do to try to identify the person? Once you found out that Malik Williams was not the person, what did you do to try to identify that third person?
So we went back and we were actively working through the investigation, and it was determined that the third person was, I believe his name was Amir Rosario. He was identified as a third person, and he had been shot and killed in May.
Okay. And I want to approach again with do you recognize what I just handed you?
Looks like a state corrections photo, and I believe that's Amir Rosario.
All right. I would move to admit Defense Exhibit 3 and publish.
No objection.
So admitted, you may publish.
I apologize, I'm not as smooth as Ms. Jones-Conner with these exhibits. All right, there we go. All right, and once that bar goes away, so you were able to identify the third person we see in these videos as Amir Rosario.
Down the road, yes, down the road.
All right. And before we get into that, I just want to back up to something you said earlier. When you said that the technology that placed Brandon at the scene was the same that you used to prove that Malik Williams was not at the scene. Mm-hmm. When we talk about cell phone location, how many feet or how many yards or hundreds of feet?
So I couldn't testify to that because I'm not a cell phone expert.
Okay. So when you're saying they were in the area, the cell phone expert has to testify about that.
Correct. He could tell you, and from my understanding, it varies from location to location on how strong a signal is. But I think that in some circumstances, it can be very short amount of distance. Some circumstances, it can be a larger amount of distance. But again, you would have to talk to someone that's the cell phone expert that can tell you about that particular location.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. Now, so at some point, you've identified Amir Rosario as Taboo.
Correct.
And you've got a phone number for him.
Correct.
And I believe you sent a subpoena to Verizon for information on that number.
I believe so.
Did you get any response from that subpoena?
Honestly, I don't recall.
Okay. Did you, and you mentioned that Taboo was killed. Do you know any of the circumstances of that?
I do not.
Okay. And briefly, I would like to talk to you about Mr. Crawford,
Okay.
and again, very briefly. Mr. Crawford told you, according to your report, that he no longer hung out with Taboo because he was unpredictable.
I think that's taken a little out of context. During my conversations with Mr. Crawford, he stated that he was not as close with Taboo as he was the other defendants, because for some reason or another, they really just didn't get along that well.
All right, but he knew who he was.
Not as sure as he was with Brandon Williams and Demetrius Ross.
All right, but he had met him at some point.
You met him at some point.
Okay. And just for clarification, I want to there was no DNA was recovered that could be matched to anyone in this case.
No. The only source DNA that we had, we tested, and it did not return any leads.
All right, there was no firearm recovered.
There was no firearm recovered. It was likely taken with the shooter when they left.
All right, hang on one second. All right, thank you.
Ma'am,
Oh,
do you want these? Okay.
Oh, it's asking for a break. Your Honor, can I have a break right now?
You need a break?
Yes.
All right, let's take a 5-minute break.
We're just making ourselves.
I feel like we're matching.
Oh, you guys are matching.
Oh, wow. I think she was in the closet with me this morning.
I couldn't figure out what the hell phone was.
Pretty good.
Let me have a jury, please.
Recording in progress.
I guess. That makes sense.
Please be seated. Please continue.
Morning.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you this morning?
I am doing well. Now, at some point, it was determined that you would be the lead investigator.
I'm sorry. Say that again for me.
At some point, it was determined that you would be the lead investigator in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And how is that determined?
So in the city of Atlanta, there's a number of homicides that occur throughout the year. So there's a number of detectives, and it varies from year to year how many are assigned to homicide. And then you go in a rotation. So as one person catches a case, they go to the bottom of the rotation. The next one gets the next assigned case, and so forth.
Okay. So when you initially responded to the scene on February the 26th, you were aware that you would be the lead investigator at that point?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this incident took place on the Beltline.
Yes.
All right. And the Beltline, it's a pretty busy place, isn't it?
It depends on what segment and what time of day and what day of the week.
Okay. Typically, the weekends might be a little bit busier than the weekdays.
Sure.
Okay. Now, when you arrived on the scene, you did see Mr. Thomas Arnold. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And he had his phone on him,
Yes.
his wallet,
Yes.
his watch,
Yes.
ID,
Yes.
credit cards,
Yes.
cash,
Yes.
insurance cards.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And it didn't appear that anything was taken from him.
That's correct.
All right. You also at some point went to Mr. Arnold's house
Yes.
and you saw his car located at the house.
Yes.
At some point, when you were on the scene, you were approached by Sydney Ward.
Yes.
And you were approached by Steve Carlin. I apologize.
Yes.
Okay. And when this incident happened, it pretty much immediately went out to the news. Is that right?
Are you talking about a press conference, or are you talking about the news arriving on scene to report that an incident had occurred?
Just information about this incident going out to the news.
So we actually didn't provide information to the media until the press conference. The media listened. They listen to our, police channels, just as anyone else can download an app. You can listen to the police channels and the scanners, and they listen out for anything, that they deem significant to report on.
Okay. And so they probably would have gotten that immediately.
I'm assuming so.
Okay. And at some point, you did go to the home of Mr. Thomas Arnold.
Yes.
Okay. And you were let into the home. Was it either by Sydney Ward or Steve Carlin? I apologize.
I honestly don't remember who physically opened the door.
But there was somebody.
There was somebody from the family, yeah.
somebody that opened the door.
Somebody related to him, yes.
Okay. Okay. Was there any body cam of the entry into Mr. Arnold's home
I don't remember. I was in plain clothes. Per our policy, you're not required to wear your body camera when you are not in uniform.
If there was any body cam video, would it have been supplied to the state?
Yes.
Okay. Was there anybody else that went with you to that home?
Another detective, I believe.
Okay. And he could have had his body camera on?
Again, I don't know if he had if he was wearing his body camera in plain clothes or not.
Now, we kind of touched base on this, but there was information that was released to the news.
Yes.
Okay. And when that information was initially released to the news, you did receive just phone calls of information that they may have had on the incident.
I'm sorry, I missed that first part of your question.
When there was the news release of this situation happening, you did receive phone calls of people wanting to report any information they may have had on this case.
So it comes in various formats. Sometimes it's direct phone calls to our office. Sometimes it's Crime Stoppers. It just depends.
But there were phone calls that came in.
Yes, throughout the course of the investigation, yes.
Was there also, you said Crime Stoppers. When you say that, are you saying that Crime Stoppers contacts you, or
They
how does that
contact
work?
us. So the person will call, I'm sorry.
I'm trying to keep it clear for the record. We can't talk over each other, so I apologize. So go ahead about Crime Stoppers.
So there's a Crime Stoppers tip line. I think they call it Crime Stoppers of Greater Atlanta. And it's a tip line. And the person makes contact with Crime Stoppers either by phone or email, or I think they have text ability now. And then that information is then passed on to whatever investigator, and it can be used for a myriad of investigations.
Okay. And in those phone calls or the information that you received, you learned that there was surveillance video.
Yes, yeah. We had a number, but prior to us going out and getting the media involved in that aspect, we had already conducted a canvass of that location.
Okay. But you did receive phone calls of individuals stating that they may have heard a gunshot.
Correct.
Okay. Now, at some point, there was a reward that was put out for any information that you all may have been given, or for someone to come forward with any information on what may have happened.
Yeah, especially when Crime Stoppers gets involved, they'll put up some sort of reward. And then in some cases, the family might contribute, family or friends might contribute to any kind of reward that might be out there.
And was this a case where the family contributed to the award?
Now, I don't know how or who contributed and how much. It all goes through Crime Stoppers and the Police Foundation, so I'm not sure who contributed what. They leave us out of that aspect. Okay.
But you are still working on the case?
I'm sorry?
You're still working on the case throughout all of this, any rewards that go out or any news releases that go out. You're still working on the case.
Yeah, actually, I'm not made aware of where the reward goes up to, or what they either set a set amount, or they don't give me that information till later.
Okay, but eventually they do give you the information?
Yes.
Okay. So are you aware that the reward did increase to $35,000?
That sounds about right.
Okay. Now, on March the 10th, I believe it was, that is when there was, I guess, a news release that included a photo of persons of interest.
Correct.
Okay. That news release, it also included a photo or video, I could be wrong, of individuals entering into a BMW?
I don't recall if we put that on there. I know that we had images of numerous people, so the trio that made contact with the BMW and the persons, I believe, that heard the sound and then trying to seek the owner of the BMW.
Okay, so I suppose there were images of this BMW and also a request for anybody who owned the BMW to come forward with any information that they may have.
Correct.
Okay. Now, after this media release, you received I won't say you personally received, but you became aware that there was somebody that may have had information on the case.
There was a couple, I believe. I need you to be more specific.
Shaquan Crawford, did he come forward?
He did not come directly to us. Okay. He approached a police officer in Hateville and initiated contact there.
Okay. But eventually you were able to speak with Mr. Shaquan Crawford.
Yes.
Okay. And this was on March the 10th, 2022?
That sounds about right. I'm not, there's so many dates, I'm not exactly sure if that's the date.
I know. Would it refresh your recollection to see your police report?
Sure.
Okay. This is page 20.
Okay, March 10th.
Okay, so that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
All right, so it was about March 10th that Mr. Crawford came forward with information that he may have had regarding this case?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this conversation with Mr. Crawford, do you remember, was it any audio or video recording?
The initial contact, I'm not sure.
Not sure. Okay. If there was any audio or video recording, it would have been provided to the state?
Yes.
And because you're not sure, essentially you are relying on your report of what Mr. Crawford said.
Yes, so when I speak to someone, I actively take notes, and then from those notes, transcribe it into my report.
Okay. Do you have your notes with you?
No.
Okay. And you would agree that just having just audio or video recording, it may be a little bit more accurate of what somebody said?
Sure.
Okay. You might be able to hear just kind of how they were responding to questions, if there were any shakiness in their voice, if there was anything like that.
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
Well, she interviewed him, so she would.
All right, that would give you some latitude overall.
I think it would depend on the context of the situation. Certainly, Mr. Crawford was concerned for his safety in coming forward in information regarding a murder investigation. So if, in my opinion, I didn't believe that he was visibly shaken, if you will. He did express concern, but it wasn't something that I think that he was terrified necessarily.
Okay. And so, hearing his statements, that was part of the reason that you did ultimately take out warrants for Mr. Williams and Mr. Ross?
His statements were part of the investigation. It gave us information as far as a lead, and then, of course, we had to take the necessary investigative steps to either confirm or dispel. Because I'm sure you're aware, there's numerous people that call in tips that can be wrong, which is why we have to be thorough and investigate information that's given to us.
But from at that time, the information that you received from Mr. Crawford, your perception of the way you took it, you didn't think that he was wrong.
I didn't have reason to believe that the information was given to me falsely. We took it merely as a lead and then conducted the necessary steps based on the information that we received to further investigate it, which is why we didn't initially take out warrants upon just getting that information alone. Okay. We took the necessary steps to look into what the information he provided and further investigate it.
Okay. And so he came forward March 10th, that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Williams, he was arrested on March the 12th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you remember when the warrants were taken out?
I don't know what day I took the warrants out.
Okay. But it would have had to been sometime between.
Sure.
Okay. The 10th and the 12th. Now, at some point, At some point, Mr. Crawford was shown a photo or shown photos of suspects or people of interest. Is that correct?
We did conduct a photo lineup. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes, we conducted a photo lineup.
Okay, so you did a lineup that included Mr. Williams?
Yes, we did one separate one for Mr. Williams, one separate one for Mr. Ross.
Okay. Now, if your memory is correct, was it one photo or was it 6 photos?
It's 6 photos.
Okay. So you showed Mr. Crawford a 6 photo lineup of Mr. Williams?
And then a 6 photo lineup of Mr. Ross. And I personally didn't show it because I created the lineup. We ask another detective to present it to him so that there's no implications of bias.
Okay. When you say implications of bias, can you kind of tell me what?
So you don't want to be anything to be considered suggestive of a lineup. You want them to receive it from someone else who didn't create it, so they don't know who the individual is that you were investigating. You pick images of or that look similar to the person you're investigating, and they have to decide of the 6 photos which one is the one that they're attempting to identify. And that way, since you have another investigator present it, they don't know who is the actual suspect.
Now, if I were to tell you that you only showed Mr. Crawford a photo of one individual in regards to Mr. Ross and one individual in regards to Mr. Williams, would that refresh your recollection of exactly what was shown to him?
Which meeting are we talking about in particular? 6 photo lineup or?
Right. So Mr. Crawford at some point did an identification. Is that correct?
He did it with, I think, Detective Hulse.
Okay. And so you just testified that it was a 6-person lineup. Is that correct?
6 photo lineup, yes.
Okay. If I were to show you in your report that it was only one photo that was shown to Mr. Williams and one photo, let me back up. If it were shown to you that there was only one photo that was shown to Mr. Crawford regarding Mr. Williams and only one photo that was shown to Mr. Ross regarding Mr. Williams, would that reflect your recollection?
Well,
for the record, can we get some clarification as to which Mr. Williams? There's a Malik Williams.
I apologize. Brandon Williams.
Are we still referring to the 6 photo lineup? That's what I'm wondering. Is that what we're referring to?
Yes, so you said there was a 6-photo lineup.
Correct. So when we do 6-photo lineups, because we don't have the best equipment in the city of Atlanta sometimes when it comes to like copiers and things like that, there's 6 individually large printed photos. So there will be one photo on each page, and they're presented in a packet.
Okay. So would it refresh your recollection if you saw the supplemental incident report that you completed of exactly what was shown to Mr. Crawford?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so we're not talking about a 6-photo lineup in this.
Correct.
Okay. So that's something completely different.
Okay, so what was shown to Mr. Ross? I'm sorry, what was shown to Mr. Crawford of Mr. Ross?
Mr. Crawford had identified Brandon Williams and Demetrius Ross based on his known familiarity. When you have someone that knows someone and is able to describe them in context and provide you the information regarding their background, how well they know someone, then you know that there's a familiarity there, and you can confirm that with them.
Okay, but it was a single photo of Brandon Williams that was showed to Mr. Crawford,
Yes, in that instance, yes.
and it was a single photo of Mr. Demetrius Ross that was showed to Mr. Crawford.
Yes, he had already identified them before then.
Okay.
And he had recognized them from the photo images that were sent to him from Mr. Williams in relation to the media footage when they had identified themselves.
Backing up a little bit, you said they identified themselves?
Yes, so in communications that was going on with Shaquan Crawford, there was text communications stating that they were a part of that and sent him the photo from the media. And that's how he even knew that there was even a story about the situation.
Okay. Just to clarify, were there any messages sent from Mr. Ross to Mr. Crawford?
I don't know if there was any communication directly to Shaquan Crawford from Demetrius Ross at that exact moment in time. But I do know that there was communications coming from directly from Brandon Williams describing the events.
And when you say describing the events, we saw the exhibits that I believe it was 97A. I could be wrong. Previous exhibits that were presented through the state, there were messages between Mr. Crawford and Mr. Williams.
Correct.
Okay. In those messages, he only sent a picture of the incident.
There were some texts as well.
Okay.
And then Mr. Crawford advised that he had numerous phone conversations that occurred.
Okay. But those texts, they did not say, let me scratch that. You said there were communications or phone conversations between Mr. Crawford and Mr. Williams.
Correct.
Okay. You don't know what the context of those phone conversations were.
I'm only provided context from Mr. Crawford as to the content of the conversation that he personally had in a private conversation with Mr. Williams.
Okay, but it's not something that you can verify.
No.
Now, at some point, you mentioned that it was brought to your attention that Mr. Ross had purchased guns or something of that nature?
Mr. Crawford stated that Mr. Ross, per Brandon Williams, that Mr. Ross did not have a felony conviction and was able to purchase guns, and that he purchased guns at pawn shops, and that he gave a gun to use to Mr. Williams.
Okay. In this statement, it would have been somewhere in your police report. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So at some point in your police report, you would have indicated that Mr. Williams told Mr. Crawford that Mr. Ross purchased guns because he didn't have any felony conviction.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to show you your police report, because your police report, it's a thorough report, correct?
Yes.
Of all the information that you are provided, correct?
Yes.
In the investigation of this case, correct?
Yes.
Okay. This incident happened in 2022, is that right?
Yes.
3 years ago, right?
Yes.
All right. I want you to look through your police report and show me where Mr. Williams told Mr. Crawford that Mr. Ross was purchasing guns because he didn't have, or he wasn't a convicted felon.
Okay. You got a minute?
I got a minute. I
Okay.
got all the minutes.
For time purposes, do you want us to direct her to a page?
No, I want her to go through the report.
Page 44.
Okay. What does it say?
Witness 1 advised Brandon Williams was claiming to be the shooter of Arnold. Williams told Witness 1 that he and Ross and Malik Williams were together at the time of the shooting. Witness 1 advised that Brandon Williams stated that he used Demetrius Ross's gun. Witness 1 stated that Ross had no felony convictions and bought guns from pawn shops. Witness 1 stated that Ross let Brandon Williams use his gun to shoot victim Arnold.
And so at that point, did you inquire as to any pawn shops that Mr. Ross may have gone to?
No. They don't do ballistics at pawn shops.
But if he purchased any guns, would he have any guns registered in his name?
Not necessarily in Georgia, no.
But they do register guns in your name. Is that correct?
No, actually, with resales of guns, they're a little different. So if you purchase a gun at a box store like Academy Sports and Outdoors, that's the initial sale of the gun. And you fill out the paperwork, it's just as you would at any authorized firearms dealer. You sign the ATF forms, acknowledging statements, that you're capable of, you don't have any convictions, you're not involved in any domestic violence investigations. On the initial purchase, my understanding is that information is shown as a purchaser. Now, when it comes to pawn shops or even third-party dealers, if I was to sell a gun to you, because I'm not a firearms dealer, I'm not required to report that I sold that gun to you and verified your identity and did a background check on you. Pawn shops are in a different category. So what they do when they receive a gun is they run it with a serial number and to see if that serial number has been reported stolen. And then when they sell it, they sell basically as they would sell an item. If that has a serial number, the serial number was sold to an individual. But there's no ballistics. When a gun is sold brand new, there's always a shell casing that's in the gun box that's sold with it, showing that a test was performed. But you don't necessarily get that with a pawn shop because someone's bringing an item. It may not have all of the parts included.
Okay. And so, I guess if there was a gun that was registered to Mr. Ross, not necessarily through a pawn shop, but through the, I guess, normal way of purchase, is that correct? It would have come back on his record.
Not necessarily. So if I purchase a gun from you, there won't be any record of it. If I purchase it from a store and then sell it to someone else, there's no record of that. So you can get guns in Georgia from various different avenues. And the only notification or the only evidence that someone purchased a gun when they purchased from a pawn shop is a purchase receipt. So if we had had any knowledge of one of the thousands of pawn shops that are in the area, then obviously we would have asked for a pawn receipt if we had known a particular firearm, which we would have had to have a serial number on to find if that was sold to Mr. Ross to begin with before he, in what we were informed of, had this gun.
Okay. Did you ask Mr. Crawford if he had any information on any specific pawn shops?
No, we did not ask him if he knew which particular pawn shops that Mr. Ross frequents at. That was not something that he stated to me that they had had conversations regarding where he shops.
Thank you.
And it is possible for a gun to be registered to somebody and for you to be able to find that registration.
It depends on the circumstances and what state you're in. In Georgia, it's not as easily accessible as in a more gun restricted state such as California or New York.
But it is accessible.
Sometimes, not always.
But it is accessible.
Sometimes, not always.
And by sometimes, that means that it is accessible.
Only if it was purchased under certain circumstances. In the state of Georgia, you're not required to register a firearm. Therefore, it allows people to purchase from third parties.
But either way, let's not go round and round. If it was registered, you would have found it on his history of gun ownership.
Not necessarily. That's the thing. I mean, I see where you're going, and I see where you're going with this. But the thing is that with firearms, there's not always a record of it, especially in Georgia.
Okay. But there are records.
In some fashion, there are records.
All right, let's move on, please.
Now, Mr. Ross, he was arrested on March the 16th of 2022.
That sounds about correct.
All right. And he was arrested in the morning.
I don't recall the time when fugitive made the arrest.
Would it refresh your recollection if you just saw kind of a screenshot of the arrest?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that's him.
Okay. And that's about 10:25 a.m.?
Yes.
And so do you know whose home that belonged to?
No, I don't know whose home that he was in. Per my recollection, no, that would have been part of the fugitive investigation.
Okay. Did you ever obtain a search warrant for Mr. Ross's home?
No.
Did you ever obtain a search warrant for Mr. Ross's mother's home?
No, and the big reason here is we knew they were on the run and moving from location to location, per the information we were receiving from Mr. Crawford, to include hotel rooms.
Okay. But where you found him at, you never obtained a search warrant for that location?
For the location that fugitive found him at, we did not obtain a search warrant for that location.
And you did not search Mr. Ross's vehicle?
No, I never located Mr. Ross's vehicle.
And in regards to just this incident in general, you never found a gun that in relation to this incident?
No.
Okay. And the gun, I'm sorry, there was no information or anything in regards to the shell casings that you found, or
The shell casing that was recovered on the crime scene, when it was analyzed by the firearms experts, had determined that there was no previous shootings that particular gun had been involved in. And to my knowledge, there has been no additional incidents that gun has been involved in.
Okay. Now, at some point, you collected the phone of Mr. Ross?
I was provided it by the U.S. Marshals and the fugitive unit.
Okay, but it would have been collected after his arrest?
It would have been collected at the time of his arrest.
At the time of his arrest.
And then provided to me.
And his arrest, as we have looked at, would have been on March 16th at around 10:25 a.m.?
Yes.
And what is the typical procedure after you receive a suspect's phone?
So when we receive a suspect's phone, we obtain a search warrant to search the contents of the phone, send it up to our cyber crimes lab, where their technicians hook the phone up to whatever device it is. I couldn't tell you what it is. And then they go through the process to extract the information and then put it into a format that I'm able to easier to read.
Do they turn the phone off?
Do they turn it off? I don't know what they do during the processing of the phone, to be honest with you.
Okay. But you received the phone on July the 1st of 2022?
Are you talking about I received the contents of the phone or the physical phone?
The contents of the phone.
If it's in the report as on that date, then yes.
Okay, so July 1st, 2022.
That would have been, I guess, when I received the contents of the download, yes.
Yes. And you were pretty thorough when going through that phone?
Yes.
All right. You went through the phone calls.
Yes.
You went through all of his previous web searches.
Yeah.
Any prior text messages.
Looking for anything connected, yes.
Photos that were in the phone.
Yeah, anything that would have been related.
Okay. Videos in the phone.
Yeah, anything that would have been related.
Locations in the phone.
No, not the locations. I can't interpret the location data.
Okay. Okay. And you wouldn't have altered his phone in any way?
No.
Okay. You wouldn't have used his phone in any way?
No.
Wouldn't have taken any pictures with his phone?
No.
And you wouldn't expect for anybody who actually extracted the phone to have done those things either?
No, I don't believe that they would have intentionally done anything like that.
But you did go through all of those contents of his phone?
I went through the contents of his phone looking for things that were related to the investigation.
When you went through the contents of his phone, you didn't see any interactions with Mr. Shaquan Crawford?
I don't recall seeing something directly related to Shaquan Crawford off the top of my head.
But if there were any contact with Shaquan Crawford, it would have been noted?
It would have been in my report, yes.
And now you, as the state brought out, there was a picture that Mr. Ross had on his phone that appeared to be from, I guess, a news report still shot.
Okay.
Is that right? You saw that picture?
I'm just going to be 100% with you. I saw the picture during the course of my testimony. I don't recall which person's phone we're referencing at this time. I just know we've seen the communications where the image was used in the course of the conversations that were occurring with Shaquan Crawford. I don't recall which particular phone that we testified to that image coming from.
If it were, I guess, would it just refresh your recollection to see the image?
Yeah, I mean, if we've got it, yeah, if we got the context of it, we know, and whatever we have shows the context that it was pulled from one particular phone, we might be able to discern which phone it came from.
Okay. But I guess at this time, you're not sure if it came from, whose phones are you not sure it came from?
Well, I know that communication was occurring. I cannot recall specifically what images were shared from whose phone to Mr. Crawford. When he's at this point in time, what you're telling me, I cannot recall which, or if not both of them were sharing the images. I just recall that images were shared with Mr. Crawford during the course of trying to get assistance from Mr. Crawford. I know that he was in direct communication with Mr. Williams, and that Mr. Williams conveyed to him that he was in communication with Mr. Ross, and that they were looking for assistance from Mr. Crawford.
Okay, but I guess if there were any communications between Mr. Crawford and Mr. Ross, it would be in Mr. Ross's phone.
Assuming that he used that phone and didn't have a burner phone. There were a couple burner phones, so the ones you go and buy at the store that start fresh, you don't have to go to a cell phone company. I do believe there were a couple burner phones used in this investigation.
You never found any burner phones on Mr. Ross?
Whatever phone we recovered that the fugitive recovered at the time of his arrest was the only phone that I have. Now I know that during the course of the investigation, I believe there's the cell phone tech that's going, or the cell phone expert can further describe what phone services, if it was a pay as you go or if it's a subscriber based kind of thing.
Okay. Now, just going to specifically the extraction of Mr. Ross's phone is what I'm focused on. You mentioned during the state's direct that there was a Channel 2 news search.
Yes.
Okay. That news search, it didn't show the details of exactly what was searched.
No.
Okay. And you couldn't see from that news search if there were, well, scratch the news search, just in his phone in general, there was no specific search for the Beltline.
So, Your Honor, I'm going to object. I think at this point we're into the best evidence. The phone extraction in its entirety has been entered in under States 134.
What is your point?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm going into, because they introduced the evidence of the Channel 2 news.
I'll give you some latitude. You may continue.
Okay. No searches for the Beltline.
I don't recall any searches specifically searching the Atlanta Beltline.
Okay. No searches specifically for Thomas Arnold.
No search specifically for Thomas Arnold.
Okay. No searches for a shooting that occurred on the Beltline.
That one I'm not 100% sure on.
But the records have been admitted and the jury will be able to see if there were any searches for that.
Correct.
Okay. And again, Mr. Ross, he was arrested on March 16th around 10:25 a.m.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And so he would not have had access to his phone after that day.
Correct.
And so there was, let me scratch that. You went through his phone, Mr. Ross's phone.
The contents that were extracted, yes.
Okay. And you would have noted any activity that occurred on his phone after March 16th?
No, because I don't have access to his phone. So all I have is what's presented to me. So during the course of their extraction, you would have to ask the people that extracted what shows up. I do believe that they're still connected to the internet, but I couldn't be 100% on that. So there's still a possibility of things that may be still downloading to the phone. But you would have to ask someone that's trained in that tech on specifically how that works.
But you reviewed the contents of the phone.
Yes.
And you reviewed the contents after the phone was extracted.
Yes.
So you would be able to see if there was any activity after Mr. Ross was arrested.
So, and then that's where it gets a little tricky. So there's logs that come in that talks about everything the phone does. I don't know how to interpret that data. So if there's something else that's done, like as far as apps and stuff, and like how the phone turns on and off and all that kind of geo stuff that happens with the phone, I don't know how to interpret that data. I can only see what's provided in the format that I'm able to view.
Okay. You'd be able to see a picture that was taken on his phone?
Yes, that's something that's in a viewable format.
Okay. You'd be able to see a text message that was on his phone?
Yes, I can see those.
Okay. So there was a text that was deleted on Mr. Ross's phone on March the 29th of 2022. You would have seen that, correct?
It depends on if it was in the format that I could view.
Okay. Would it refresh your recollection if I showed you the image of Mr. Ross's phone?
Sure. I'm not entirely sure what you're pointing at. What does the X mean?
So you don't know what an X means on the phone?
On that, no.
Okay. So you reviewed the cell phone record. You reviewed Mr. Ross's cell phone record.
No, I reviewed the report that was provided to me of the analysis. I didn't review the actual details.
Okay. So you reviewed the report that was from Mr. Ross's cell phone.
Yes,
Okay.
to an extent that I'm able to.
And you've been testifying on the state's direct as to what you saw in those reports.
To what I can see, yes.
And I just showed you an image of Mr. Ross's report, cell phone report.
Okay.
The state previously showed you images of Mr. Ross's cell phone. Is that right?
Some images, yes. Of something, yes.
And you were able to identify those images?
Yes.
Okay. But today, as I show you this image, you're unsure?
Well, you were asking me to read about something that was X'd. That I'm not sure about. I couldn't tell you what the X on that means.
Does X sometimes mean deleted?
Could also mean an error.
Okay. But you didn't run the extraction?
I didn't run the extraction.
Okay. And reviewing the report of Mr. Ross's phone, would you have noted any activity after Mr. Ross was arrested?
Yeah, if it was anything related to the incident.
But you didn't note anything important, I guess, after his arrest?
Not related to the incident, no.
Would you be able to note any messages that were sent from Mr. Ross's phone?
If it was in the format I was able to view, then yes.
One moment, Your Honor. If there was any activity in Mr. Ross's phone that was related to the arrest after his phone was collected, you would have made note of that.
So if my understanding, and again, I'm very limited on my understanding on what happens to the phones after they go to the cybercrimes lab, but my understanding is they try to have them on while they're processing them. I don't know the reasoning for how they do what they do. If they're on, then they're probably still transmitting data, which, you just like, and I'm an Apple product user, so I can access things on my phone from a remote location from my computer or another iPhone that I've had previously, and it'll still transcribe the same because it's connected to the same account. And I don't know if that's what you're referencing to, if maybe it was accessed and it's connecting to the phone. But I can't tell you if something directly came origin from that phone. You'd have to talk to a cell phone expert that can tell you if communications or something were directly being received or transmitted from that phone at a particular time.
Okay. And ultimately, in regards to this case, you didn't find any gun.
No gun.
Okay. There was no surveillance video of the actual shooting.
No, there was no footage of the shooting.
There was no DNA that came back to Mr. Ross.
No, there was no recovered DNA of Mr. Ross.
All right. Give me one moment. All right, I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Okay.
I do have some follow-up questions. Now, Detective Parent, I just kind of want to fairly quickly walk back through kind of some of the digital items that you received, because I think we got a little tangled up there. So, the photo, Mr. Crawford shared with you a text conversation with a photo that was sent of the press release from APD. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And that was around the murder of Mr. Arnold on the Beltline.
Yes.
Okay. And he provided those images to you.
Yes.
And in just a moment, I'm going to show on the screen. States Exhibit 97 and 97A and 97B.
I'm recording big long clips.
Okay, in States 97A, this is the message that you saw where someone had sent to Mr. Crawford about the Beltline murder.
Yes.
Okay. What is the contact name that we see at the top?
Kid.
Okay. During your investigation, were you able to tie the nickname Kid to either of the defendants?
Yes.
And who was that?
I don't remember. There were so many nicknames. I would have to look at my report to refresh me.
It would refresh your recollection to look at your report?
Yes.
And I'm on page 29. But please take a look at that middle section of page 29 and let me know if that refreshes your recollection.
Okay, so Kid would be Kid DeHardy or Brandon Williams.
Okay. And so that nickname of Kid, which is also the contact that we see here, Mr. Crawford's phone, connected to Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Okay. So this conversation is between who?
Mr. Williams and Mr. Crawford.
Okay. And then you only received a phone extraction report tied to one of the defendant's phones. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that was who?
Mr. Ross.
Okay. Now turning your attention to states 134A, I believe, and 134B. So looking at states 134A and 134B, were these two items products of an extraction report that you received?
Yes.
And that was the extraction report tied to Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Okay. And these images, are they also related to the news report?
Yes.
Okay. Now, that news report also aired on Channel 2 News, is that correct?
Yes.
WSB-TV, is that correct?
I believe that's their moniker.
Okay. It was preserved on YouTube, the same YouTube link that we see in those text messages, isn't that right?
I believe so.
Okay. I'm going to approach you. I'm going to approach you with a portion of states 96 that we already, or 97, excuse me, that we already saw. And let me know if you recognize it. Do you recognize this portion contained within states 97?
Yes, that looks like one of the stories that they put on.
Related to this case?
Yes.
Okay. And this would have aired roughly when? Month and year?
February or March, depending on the date of 22. But it definitely would have been after the incident.
All right, let me approach again. Would it refresh your recollection to see when this portion was aired?
Yes. It's dated February 28th, 2022.
Okay. I'm going to publish the video tied to this portion of States 97. It'll come up on that screen in just a moment. I'm sorry, we're trying to start from the beginning to make sure we get that accurately. So what we're viewing on the screen here, that's the news release connected to this case that was released to the media on February 28th of 2022.
This is one of the broadcasts on the story. I don't think this is the press conference, though.
Not the press conference, a news release related to this same conference.
Yes, a news release about the story, yes.
Understood. And the photo that we saw in the beginning there, you also came across that same photo of Mr. Arnold in Mr. Ross's phone.
Yes.
Okay. Oh. And that's the photo we see on the screen currently?
Yes.
And Your Honor, this is contained within State's Exhibit 1, or excuse me, State's Exhibit 97, but I'm going to mark it as State's Exhibit 135 for identification purposes.
No objection.
So admitted.
Now, Sergeant 470-528-2196. That's the phone number that Mr. Crawford provided to you at the time you interviewed him, correct? As his phone number.
I would have to refresh my report about the particular phone number.
Well, let me ask this. In regards to your report that ends up being shared in discovery amongst parties and all of that, did you even use Mr. Crawford's full name?
No.
And why was that?
Because he expressed that he was concerned for his safety. So during the course of the investigation, we wanted to limit his identity as much as we could for as long as we could because he expressed concerns for his safety.
Understood. So it wouldn't surprise you to know that Mr. Crawford's name and the phone number he provided, 470-528-2196, are not contained in your report.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I do want to revisit State's Exhibit 134, which is the extraction of Mr. Ross's phone. I'm actually going to pull up the full extraction just so we can follow real time. Are you able to see States 134 on that screen in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to just toggle down so we can see the title here. And looking at the title there, are you able to identify this as the cell phone extraction of Mr. Ross's phone that you received?
Yes.
Okay. And here we have a search bar where we entered in the phone number. I entered in the phone number 470-528-2196. Can you please just read out that result for us that we got from the call log section?
The number appears as 1, which would be the United States, 470-528-2196.
And is there a phone call that takes place?
On the side, it says that the call was received and answered at 3:24:33 p.m. on the 12th.
Any information about a duration of that call?
Looks like 2 minutes and 19 seconds.
Thank you, Sergeant. And when you talked to Mr. Crawford, he specifically told you that he did not associate with Taboo, but he did not associate with Taboo, correct? That's how he phrased it, correct?
Yeah, he knew of him and that he met him, but that he did not have a close relationship with him.
And I know we looked earlier at the warrant tied to who you were later able to confirm was not Taboo, but Mr. Malik Williams.
Correct.
Okay. And the warrants for Mr. Malik Williams did not come about until September of 2022. Is that right?
Correct.
And how long was that from when you got warrants for Mr. Williams and Mr. Ross? Roughly.
5.5, 6 months. Is my math on? I'm not good at the math, so.
Me neither.
Okay.
So, after all those months, what was the difference in why you proceeded at that point with a warrant for Mr. Malik Williams?
So it took a long time to get to develop information about Malik Williams. We worked with the Department of Justice to try to find out who may have been in jail around the same time, who had similar nicknames, and had to validate the information before we could go forward. It took a long time to get to that point because of a lot of, there wasn't as much readily accessible information. We had to really work to find it.
So had information, but it wasn't enough at that.
It was not enough to secure a warrant, no.
Understood. Now, there was some discussion earlier about some of the things we saw in the video and different people that were passing by, but I know you might not have done it in the, I guess, 24 hours we've had you up here, but during your investigation, did you review the past of different individuals that passed, where they were coming from, and where they ended up going?
Yes, it took several days to go through the footage and look at the paths of people to see if they were remaining in the area or if they were passing through or had arrived or were departing the area.
Okay. So, for example, I think we, Mr. Norman yesterday pointed out the man that we saw crossing across the grass part under the bridge, correct?
Yes.
You recall that?
Yes.
Around, I want to say it was 10:15 p.m. We saw him on that Freedom Parkway image. You remember that?
Yes.
Okay. However, you also have footage of the other side of the Beltline, right?
Mm-hmm.
I need yes,
Yes.
for the record. Other side of the Beltline, and then the exit of the Beltline onto Elizabeth Street, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 131. And again, for State's Exhibit 131, if we were walking under that bridge and we head towards the right instead of the left, will we end up on this path of the Beltline?
Yes.
Okay. And so as we saw that gentleman crossing over the grass was towards the right, is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to hit play at timestamp 10 hours, 15 minutes, 22 seconds, and 0.663 milliseconds. Did you capture that same gentleman walking in the path?
Yes.
Okay. And is that in the direction of Beach Circle or the opposite direction?
No, that's more in line with going towards Elizabeth Street.
Okay. Then we had, I think it was the gentleman who was running. We saw that footage on Elizabeth Street. Do you recall watching
Yes.
that earlier?
Yes.
And that we saw on the Elizabeth Street and Bernina, that intersection of the Wise camera. We
Yes.
saw about 22, 43, 17 timestamp. We saw that gentleman running by. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And the direction he was running from, would that be in the direction of the Beltline, possibly?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to go back to State's Exhibit 131. But to camera 2. It'll come up on that screen in front of you in just a second. And again, this is footage you would have reviewed hours and hours of during your investigation. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to start at timestamp 10:42:14, just a hair before we see that Elizabeth Street camera. camera 2 about a minute or so before we saw him on the other.
Yes, it looks like he's wearing a similar top.
Now again, after we see those 3 individuals who were later identified as Taboo, Brandon Williams, and Demetrius Ross, after we see them follow behind the woman who we see exit on Elizabeth Street,
Yes.
do we see them on any other camera footage after that?
No.
We also viewed some footage of the vehicle we saw those gentlemen enter into earlier in the evening when we first saw them on camera footage. That black BMW?
Yes.
And there was some time where we saw, I'll say woman because she appears to be one from the footage. We saw her return to her vehicle and kind of stop at the front of the vehicle. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, when we were on direct examination, we reviewed images or video footage of when that vehicle first arrived and she exited her vehicle. Is that right?
Yes.
Would you have continuous footage from that point until the time that vehicle left that evening?
From that camera, yes, every minute.
Now, I am going to pull up State's Exhibit 9. Press play at timestamp 16:04:55. What time would that be in minutes terms?
4:04 p.m.
Now, looking at this footage, do you see anything of note?
It appears that the individual, I guess it's a male, walks over to the windshield and it looks like he lifted the windshield wiper maybe and put something down.
Okay. And you may be able to see as they pull up a little bit.
Oh, that's Park Atlanta.
So, with reviewing that footage and Park Atlanta, in your expertise, what would you think was present?
Oh, knowing Park Atlanta, they 100% gave her a ticket.
Oh. And last question for you, Sergeant. You said you also had footage covering how long that vehicle remained until the point it left. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so we saw her return to her vehicle when you watched earlier with Mr. Norman around, I believe it was around 2,300 hours. Is that correct?
Sounds about right.
Okay. Go to that point of State's Exhibit 9. Now here at State's Exhibit 9, I'm going to start playing at timestamp 23 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. And Sergeant, just let us know when you see that individual in that vehicle drive off. Are you able to observe anything about the interior of the vehicle, Sergeant?
Not with the doors closed. Only that it's a light colored interior.
And at this point, from your observation, is that woman still inside the vehicle?
Yes, she's not exited the vehicle. She starts moving at 2304 or 1104 and a half.
Okay. And this is real time, right, Sergeant?
Yes.
Okay. So the amount of time we sat here watching that video is the amount of time she would have spent sitting in her vehicle before driving off.
Correct.
No further questions.
One moment, Joe. any further questions for this witness.
I don't have any other questions, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, Judge.